Okay. I hope everybody is doing well. Shalom. All right. Let's see here. Get myself together. Okay. All right. We'll just give it a few minutes to allow people to come in. Shalom. Okay. All right. We got 146 people. We'll give it one more minute. I hope everybody is doing well. The weather here sucks. We've been having that rain off and on today. No sun, just all overcast and cloudy and periods of rain. So, okay. All right. Now, we all know how bad it has been as far as leadership in America. And let's face it, let's call this what it is. We do not have the brightest of the bright leading this country. We haven't for a long, long time. You know, I don't care what these folks pat themselves on the backs and call themselves or say they have. At the end of the day, it is a real embarrassment, not just here in the US, but globally. It's a global embarrassment. And the countries are also seeing it. You know, when Trump makes statements like injecting yourself with disinfectant, that stuff goes out worldwide. It's not something that we just hear in this country. So now the rest of the world can see the level of stupidity that we have been under all this time. Now, one thing about coronavirus, it does make you sick, but it also reveals the truth about who and what these folks are. There's no denying it. Boy, have we seen some F-ups from Trump from the beginning of this entire thing, all the way up until now. So there is a world reaction to this. All right, this came out in the LA Times. Global response to coronavirus stymied by the lack of leadership from the US and Trump. Trump's America's First policies, contempt for multilateral organization, and testy relationships with other world leaders are contributing to what many see as a surprisingly lack of global unity and coordination in combating COVID-19 pandemic. It is usually the US president who would lead such an effort in times of global emergency, but Trump's moves to weaken Western post-World War II alliances such as NATO, his harsh treatment of traditional American allies, and his slow response to the coronavirus have prevented close cooperation, even along with United States' usual partners, including Europe and Canada. Taking their cues from Trump and other nations has similarly turned inward to fight a health threat that has defied borders. Far from rising to a shared cause, most countries are battling on their own. If anything, the pandemic has fueled nationalist sentiment, including among hawks inside the Trump administration, and reignited international rivalries. What we're seeing is the biggest global crisis of our lifetime, with truly no global response. Trump's orientation and his unilateralism and his challenging personal relations with so many of our key allies have made worse what's going to be a severe scriptural crisis with irreparable damage. So it's going to be irreparable damage what Trump is doing to not only the United States, but the world. Past crises such as an economic crash of 2008 and the 2014 Ebola outbreak, the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, World Health Organization, and other international institutions joined with the U.S. officials and leaders from around the world to fight back and lead the recovery effort. Central banks from the wealthiest 20 countries produced plans in 2008 that stimulated the economy and stabilized institutions, while medical teams from dozens of countries rushed to West Africa in 2014 to battle a deadly outbreak of a feared disease. There are key differences, of course. The economic crash was limited to financial and economic sectors. Ebola was a more contained contagion. The scale of the new coronavirus is far broader, hitting numerous countries with a swift succession, with deaths mounting, economies paralyzed, and the impact spreading through every sector of society. Some governments may feel too overwhelmed with cases to join a global effort, even if there were one. For Trump and the United States, it's a missed opportunity to reassert American global leadership and goodwill at a time when the status is under growing threat from China and others, experts say. And rather than call for a global unity, Trump frequently portrays the battle against the virus as an international competition, boasting that the U.S. is doing better than other nations at testing and containing deaths. Through both claims are disputed. And we know the U.S. is not doing great with this thing, and we haven't from the start. But every time he gets up at the mic, oh, they're doing a tremendous job. We've done more testing than any other nation. Who cares about that? Seriously, who cares about that? People are still dying. And not enough people have been tested. Nobody cares about that. He always goes up to the mic bragging as if everything is going just well in the U.S. and it's all contained. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. They are struggling with this thing. And it's been a struggle from the start. And he needs to stop lying. Look, it's so stupid. Oh, boy. William Burns, former Deputy Secretary of State and president of Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, said American leadership established strong partnerships abroad that created an invaluable force multiplier, using a military reference to suggest how a single action can reverberate and produced numerous additional benefits. And this one, the Trump White House blend of arrogance and ineptitude against a backdrop of more than 3 years of diplomatic disarmament as a force divider, said in an email. So what they're saying is, when it comes down to bringing the world together to fight a pandemic, Trump has been more of a divider than uniting. But then, you know what? He don't even unite the country. He has a serious inability to do that. He don't unite this country at all. Shoot, if you're in isolation, you're just in isolation. When you listen to him, you don't feel better. I never feel better after Trump gets finished talking. Nobody does. Come on. Nobody does in the country. Nobody does globally feels better when Trump speaks. He just don't have what it takes. He's not a person that can be empathetic at all. In his almost daily briefings lately, Trump has defended his response to the deadly pandemic and insisted that the U.S. is working to help other nations by manufacturing needed medical supplies and working on a vaccine. Again, that's garbage. You don't even have enough medical supplies for the United States. How can you help somebody else get medical supplies? You don't even have them here. Okay. But he's made no apology about focusing on the U.S., saying protecting Americans is the utmost priority. But you know what? How much of a priority is it if you want to reopen a country that is definitely not ready to be reopened? Trump has repeatedly cited his moves to isolate from the rest of the world, including his January 31st order to restrict some travel from China and later from Europe, Canada, and Mexico as critical to stopping the spread of the virus in the U.S. White House officials insist Trump has maintained contact with other world leaders in dealing with the crisis, though little documentation of such conversations has been released. Trump was planning a teleconference with G7 leaders on Thursday, and his staff has reached out to economic, health, and science officials in numerous countries, aide said. Trump's leadership and concrete action has spurred the international community to take steps necessary to save lives. White House spokesman Judd Deere said, by any honest measure, the scope and reach of President Trump's global leadership has been historic. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. These countries are saying they can't even rely on the U.S. anymore like they used to. Trump supporters says his approach is working. What approach? What approach? What approach does this man have? Kudos for the president, James Carafano, a fellow at the Conservative Heritage Foundation. Carafano and others say Trump has dealt with other world leaders behind the scenes. Okay. I think these people just sit around and make up stuff to say. I really do. All right. Critics, however, say Trump, his administration was undercut by traditional venues of collective action last month as it became clear the world was headed for a recession. The group of 7 composed of the top economies failed to reach agreement at a joint statement due to the Trump administration's insistence on referring to COVID-19 as the Wuhan virus as a way to emphasize blame on China. Well, I don't disagree with Trump on that. Now, calling it the Chinese virus and Wuhan virus, Trump has said that in the past, and he said it recently. And look, that's where it started. Isn't that where it started? But see, now they're jumping up and screaming xenophobia and racism if you say that, which makes absolutely no sense. Makes no sense. Okay, he accused the organization of initially underestimating the threat from the disease, as Trump did, and having a perceived bias in favor of China. U.S. funding constitute roughly 17% of the World Health budget, which they cut them off. Trump cut them off. Those pushing for a global response to the pandemic are sounding alarms. Vocally frustrated UN Secretary Antonio Guterres has seen his calls for more global coordination largely ignored during the health crisis, including a worldwide ceasefire and regional conflicts and easing of sanctions against countries besieged by the pandemic, like Iran and Venezuela, and a multi-trillion-dollar emergency humanitarian aid fund. The relationship between the biggest powers have never been as dysfunctional as now. International cooperation has never been this low. I know many think that they can do it by themselves. COVID-19 is showing dramatically either we are together or we can be defeated. Pope Francis echoed the sentiment in an unusually political Easter Sunday address, decrying functional hypocrisy, indifference, and self-centeredness at the highest level of governments. Gordon Brown, Prime Minister of Britain during 2008 recession. And there has been too much America first, India first, China first, and that countries had to acknowledge they're interdependent, whether we like it or not. We cannot say we are doing everything it takes to counter the pandemic unless we all come together to obtain a global response, he said, by phone. This is our moment of truth. It is no longer a debate between globalism and nationalism. Brown is one of more than 100 former leaders who have written to the G20 to call for an $8 billion plan to develop a vaccine, expand universal capacity to detect, test, and treat the disease, and shore up the economy. To be sure, international fractures predicate the pandemic. Trump has built his political career in part on skepticism about international pacts. A rise in right-wing nationalism was already occurring in many countries. The coronavirus has shone a spotlight on what was already happening, said Georgetown Nixon. Trump is both symptom and accelerant. Although the European Union did finally agree last week on a stimulus package to help members of the 27-country bloc, strains that have plagued it for years, reemerging and threatened to drive a deeper wedge. Germany's economy, which has had relative low contention, was reluctant to go to the aid of Italy or Spain, where infections and deaths are soaring. Anti-EU sentiment already festering in some countries. Smaller countries that might have turned once to the United States in a crisis have looked instead to China or Russia. Two longtime U.S. rivals who are making the most of the U.S. vacuum by sending supplies around the world. Even China's, whose initial secrecy fueled the global outbreak, is hoping to gain international praise for offering assistance to other nations. Much to the frustration of Trump's State Department, a number of governments appear to be exploiting the crisis to crack down on dissent at home and consolidate power, as in case of the Hungarian president, Viktor Orban, and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Asked about concerns such as leaders are taking advantage, the administration again seen to abdicate its customary leadership role. In the time of a crisis, we turn to each government to do what we think is best for their communities and to be able to ensure safety and security, said Julie Chung, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, in a briefing with reporters. So I defer to each of the separate governments on what individual measures they are taking. So to sum it up in a nutshell, these countries out here don't feel they can look to America for leadership. They feel that Trump is not the kind of person they can rely on during a pandemic. So right now, it's every man for himself out here. That's how it is. Look, this is how it is within. Now, think about this. They said Black people get this the most, right? Black people get it the most. How many times through this whole thing have they said we need to get more funding to the Black communities and get more testing done and get this done right away? You know, they talk a good game, but we don't see no action in the Black community. You can talk to people in the hood right now and they will tell you ain't nobody hardly around them are getting tested. And remember, they didn't start running to the streets until the media put out there that we get it the most without showing any data. I mean, we've been asking for data damn near going on a month, and they have not provided one piece of data to back up how we get it more than anyone else. You know, all they want to do is tell you some per capita mess or some percentages. We don't want to hear that. Give us the raw numbers. See, if we get the raw numbers, then they know that, hold on one second. Okay, they know if we get raw numbers, they're not going to come out looking so good. That's what they know. And we know who's dying the most in this country. We know. Well, you just go to your nearest obituary and you will see who's dying the most. You know, like I was telling y'all before, I live in a mostly Black area. When you open up the obituary pages, you might see a few of us sprinkled in there. The rest of them are elderly white people. I did see a few younger ones there that died from COVID-19, but the majority of them are elderly. So, as far as the handling of this pandemic, America gets an F, a big F. Yeah, well, they're talking about UV light. Don't hold your breath on that. You know, the bottom line is if you go sit outside in the sun, if that's the case, they would be rolling all of these patients outside for some sun. Don't jump on something because you heard them say it. That's all I'm saying. That's why I talk to my uncle. I talk to people that are in a hot climate right now. And my uncle tells me how he's around the house sweating his behind off out in that sun. But if you go look at the cases in Florida, those cases are going up every single day. All right. They're going up every day. And when I talked to him the last time, it was 95 degrees. The ocean temperature in Florida is in the 80s. So the water is warm. So, if if you're looking at temperatures like that, then shouldn't it be diminishing in Florida and not going up every day? Yeah, it has. He told me that same thing. Ted Perp. It's been hot for quite a few weeks. I mean, you don't have to speculate about this. Start looking at states where it's already hot. That should give you a roadmap to what it's going to be like in the country. Yeah, I mean, it's at the point where is it even worth listening to these press conferences if you're going to get a president standing there talking about find a way to get Lysol and disinfectant in the body? I mean, is it even worth it? I guess you can watch it if you're looking for a form of entertainment. Then I guess you can watch it. But yeah, the world is not feeling America anymore. They ain't feeling America. How can they? You're leading the world in all the cases and all the deaths. Why would they rely on you? Wouldn't they go to a nation that is not experiencing that many deaths and figure out what they're doing? Why would they come to the person that got the most deaths and the most cases for leadership? They won't. Well, Trump can say anything he wants. The bottom line is when he said it at the time, he didn't scream no sarcasm. He didn't start saying sarcasm until after he started getting dragged in the media. Then all of a sudden it's sarcasm. Yeah, that's one thing. Manolo, you're right. That's one thing that is right. It has exposed so many things, especially about, you know, these politicians, these churches and pastors and stuff. It has pulled the band-aid off of everything. It is so many lies and things that you just can't believe going on in this society. Well, yeah, Video 99, he was dead serious when he said it, and I bet people went out there trying to do it. Yeah, oh, well, we don't care as long as it's just his supporters doing that. That's okay. We won't stop his supporters. If they want to put some bleach in their veins, they can have at it. We ain't following nothing that Trump says. Yeah, absolutely. We do. We have to remain in place as long as this thing is active. If these folks, like in Georgia, if they want to reopen their states, that don't mean you have to go out there and join them. Stay out of those places. I mean, this thing is still out there. It's still highly contagious. We don't have to do everything we see them doing. And I would strongly urge you not to do it. You go out when you feel it's safe to be out there. If you don't feel it's safe, you stay in place. Plain and simple. You know, I only see one group of people out there diving around and running on the beaches and everything. You don't have to join them in that. And the thing is that Georgia governor, they advised him against doing that mess. Thank you, Cameron, for the super chat. Lisa, what West African presidents are doing for their people will amaze you. Okay. No, Denise Clark, I'm here in Georgia and I will not participate in their foolishness. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You know, especially if you got a family, you can't risk yourself out there and risk bringing that stuff home to your family and your children, your wife, your husband. You can't risk that. And they don't have one single job out here that's worth dying for. Not one job out here is worth dying for. None. I mean, you keep sending people out there with this thing still going around, it's going to get to the point where it will not be controllable at all. Yeah, you know, I am too. I don't care about these governors talking about reopening. They can't make me go out there. So I don't care. I don't care nothing about them talking about that. I could care less. No governor is going to decide whether I do anything. If I want to do it, I'll do it at my own accord. If I don't want to do it, then that's on me too. But I don't care what they reopen. It don't mean I have to show up in those places, and I'm not going to. And look, all of these people that are running out there, count out about 10 to 14 days, and their symptoms should be showing up about then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just sit back and wait. They are not. Look, the mayor out there in Vegas was trying to get those hotels and casinos and everything back up and running, and them, the workers are pretty much telling her to go to hell. They're not going back in no place to work with this virus still out here, and I don't blame them. Can't have no hotel and casinos open with all of this going on. But you know what it is. If they want to risk their lives, let them do it. Let them do it. We don't do what they do. Yeah. Bootsy, you're right. A lot of people are saying that Atlanta is the experimental phase. You're right. A lot of people are saying that. Hmm. Well, they sure wouldn't be experimenting on me. Mm-mm. I'm sorry. Hmm. And then that old crazy deputy governor down there in Texas. I think he's in Texas, telling people there's more important things than living. I'm like, what? Man, get out of here. I mean, the bottom line is they're not going to save this at this point, and it's going to take so long for them to get caught up. Even if they open the economy, businesses would just be literally sitting there trying to play catch up. Hmm. I just hope our people stay in and not be out in those streets believing that it's not going to affect them. We can't be thinking like that. Yeah, I did a video on that old crazy deputy governor Roz, and yeah, I heard what he said. No, nobody should have to sacrifice themselves. That's a bunch of bullshit. And if that's the case, let him gather himself and his family and let them sacrifice themselves first. No, he ain't gonna sacrifice no part of himself. He gonna let everybody else do it, but sit in the background talking all kinds of shit. You know what it is? They don't feel empowered as long as they're sitting in the house. And if their economy is not making money, they feel like, they just don't feel empowered anymore. Everything about these people is fueled by money. Everything, even from their beginnings here in this country, all fueled by money. So if they're not making money, they now feel worthless. They feel like their country is gone if they're not making money in it. But America, look, we are already in a depression. We're already in it. There's no way you can shut your country down for over a month and everything is okay. It's not. It's not. So as long as this country, people are sitting around and they're not working, they feel like they're losing everything. So, I mean, you have a choice. You can sit at your house and wait for this to, pass, which I don't believe it will, or you can go out there and sacrifice yourself for, and think about this. You're sacrificing yourself from over a nation that never treated you right. They have no right to make that demand from anybody in the Black community. They have no right to make that demand that you go out there and help them bring a nation back up that never treated us right from day one. Hmm. I'm sorry. I think we're now so wide awake, they're not going to rock us back to sleep anymore. We're wide awake now, you know? And this awakening is global. I see what's going on with those Chinese people in Africa. Those Africans are really rising up. They had enough after looking at all the stuff they have done. And I mean, look, what are you really rising up for? You're going to jobs that I'm sure all of you should be paid a lot more than what you got. Many of you know that. And you're going to be going back out in the streets for cops to be messing with us again, killing us unarmed, attacking you, and then these fat women with the cell phones, they'll be back up in your face. So what are we going to really look forward to out here if we go back in it? Seriously, I mean, walking up on people, pulling out the phone, screaming they gonna call the cops, messing with you over a bunch of, that's what you're gonna be going back to. Is that really what you want? Is that what you want? Because that's what we're gonna be getting. And they're gonna see to it that we get that. We're gonna get all of the same things that we got before this virus. And look at how our kids were treated. Never forget how many of our children were hassled over their hair. And every time we would see the hairstyles they had, those hairstyles were neat. But that's what you would be going back to. You would be going back to oppression. It's got to end somewhere. So for them, yeah, they got a reason to go back. They got all of the goodies. They got all the monies and all of the unfair advantages, and the legal system worked in their favor. Yeah, I see why they want everything back, but those things never worked for us. Never forget that. Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's in a position now. You got to educate your children at home now. You have no choice. Now everybody is homeschooling. We talked about that forever. Now look, everybody's homeschooling. The ones that got small kids, you got the task of educating your children at home. They can't go back into a confined area like a school and buildings where they're confined. They can't go back to that anymore. Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of domestic violence going on, but I don't think that's us. I don't think a lot of it is us. I've been actually looking in the paper at that. I see an awful lot of white dudes in the paper for domestic violence these days. Y'all check out the paper when you see them stories. That's what I'm seeing. Pull up domestic violence and just count how many you see. Some of them, of course, they're not going to have a picture, but that's how the media works around here. If it's anybody that look like them, then they're going to conceal everything. No, you know what I think, Kevin, Kenvin, what I think is they're trying to say it's us, so that whenever any kind of treatment or vaccines come out, it will give them excuses to come to the Black neighborhood first to try that mess out. And we have to reject that. It's easy to put in the psyche of people, oh, it's mostly those Black people getting it, which we know is not true. But then they'll turn around when there is a vaccine finally coming out. Oh, well, we need to start where, it's hitting the most, and that's in the Black community. And next thing you know, they'll be trying to justify coming here because they already put out there that you get it the most. And no, it can't be that way. All right, y'all. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming by. And as usual, I make sure my prayers are consistent. I pray for my brothers and sisters in all four corners of the earth. I pray he keeps a hedge of protection around you and your families. And I pray that our people use common sense and stay out of harm's way. All right, family. Take care of yourselves. Peace, family.